Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com. This is a bit of a response to the comments from my last battle report that was up on MiniWarGaming, and that was the beat map bat rep against Cam's Imperial Guard. It was Necrons versus Imperial Guard. And there's a few comments I wanted to address because it seems to have sparked up a bit of controversy perhaps, or even a little bit of negativity. But I wanted to talk about exactly what was said there. Basically, the comments seemed to go towards that people didn't like the fact that I had tailored my list against Cam's mechanized Imperial Guard because I had won the game so thoroughly. Some people thought it was unfair that I should know ahead of time what he's bringing and be able to tailor my list against it. And if that were the case, of course, you'd be exactly right. The thing is, let me give you a bit of background first off. For the beat map bat reps, people don't tell me necessarily what they're bringing. They just tell me the main idea. Like somebody will say, I'm bringing Blood Angels, or I'm bringing Imperial Guard. I do request that they just let me know the basic idea behind it, like a mechanized Imperial Guard. Like, are you bringing tons of tanks? Are you bringing tons of vehicles? And the reason for that is because with 40K, if you have mismatched armies, then the game kind of sucks. Now, unfortunately, sometimes what happens is when I create an army to match theirs, it works too well. But in the case of this game, if you watch the battle report, I did not simply win because of a tailored list. And I didn't even win really because of awesome tactics on my part. I won because of two probably critically serious tactical mistakes on Cam's part. Now Cam, we've already talked about this, and we did a post-game show which goes into the MiniWarGaming Vault. We always talk about tactics and how things could have gone better. So Vault members, you've already heard a lot of this. But there was two major mistakes that Cam made in that battle. First off, Scarab Swarms, Necron Scarab Swarms, are the ultimate anti-tank weapon, is really what it comes down to. Going up there and with their entropic strike, tons of attacks, 5 attacks per base, and being able to, they have fleet and they get to charge 12 inches because they're beasts. They are very good at getting up into your face, into the tanks, and then ripping down their armor, and then they could, as soon as they start ripping down the armor just a bit, they can actually start glancing and penetrating with their strength 3. And the thing is, I had first turn, and so I took a risk because I knew that he could seize the initiative, and I put the Scarab Swarms out in the open. And that's dangerous because swarms die easily. As soon as you hit them with a strength 6 or higher, they get insta-killed, or you hit them with a blast template that's lower than strength 6 and they get double wounds. We're not going to debate here whether they should do both when it's strength 6 blast. That's not really what this is about. And so what you normally want to do is put them in cover. Because they are swarms, they have stealth, so they get +1 of their cover saves, so typically they'll be getting 3+ cover, which means your opponent has to waste a lot of high strength weapons to take them down, because 3+ cover is pretty hard to destroy. And so they were out in the open, and then Cam stole the initiative, which I thought was basically going to be a game ender for me. But then he made a critical mistake. He had 3 Leman Russes, all with heavy plasma cannons. Now, heavy plasma cannon can fire 3 small blasts that are strength 7, so it's a perfect anti-swarm. And unfortunately, he decided to target my warriors. He targeted a squad of 18 warriors who happened to be in cover with 2 of his Leman Russes. Now, ironically, one of those Leman Russes scattered onto the Scarab Swarms and insta-killed one of the Scarab Swarms. But other than that, he just knocked down probably 5 or 10 warriors, and then half of those stood back up because of the reanimation protocols. His last Leman Russ, he decided I should probably target some Scarab Swarms, and he fired the 3 templates onto the group of 6, and only one of them got a direct hit, and the other 2 scattered off completely. And that one that got a direct hit destroyed 3 of the 6 bases, because it hit 4 of them, and he only rolled 1/1 out of the 4 2+. And so he insta-killed 3 of them. So just one Leman Russ Demolisher, when it missed completely with 2 of its small blasts, destroyed half of one of the Scarab Swarm bases. So imagine what would have happened if all of those Leman Russes focused on the Scarab Swarms. There would have been nothing left. Maybe 1 or 2 would survive, but that's not enough to do as much damage as they did. Those Scarab Swarms went on to kill 6 of his tanks, or at least, I think they killed 5 and maimed 1. They tore it to pieces, but it was still alive by the end of the game. And they did it relatively quickly. Also, he had a lot of last cannons, and he fired those last cannons into my Lich Guard, who had Dispersion Shields, which is 4+ invulnerable save, instead of firing them at the Scarab Swarms, which would have been insta-killed. At least the ones on the one flank would have been able to have a clear line of sight without any cover. So that was the first mistake. It was a bad target priority, which is a very important thing when you're playing Warhammer 40K, is that you choose the right target. In this case, he saw the large group of warriors and thought, you know, I want to soften that up because they can do a lot of damage, which they can. And he managed to hit it lots, but because they're in a 4+ cover, and then they have a 4+ reanimation protocol, then that's tough to take down. It's really difficult to take that larger group down just with shooting at a distance. The second mistake that he made was he moved his tanks up. The Scarab Swarms, he probably didn't fully understand what the Scarab Swarms did. He understood that they had entropic strike and all that, but since the Necrons are new, it wasn't something that he was familiar with. So this isn't because he's not good at 40k, it's something because he's not used to Scarab Swarms being, like, you don't see as little swarms and automatically assume, oh, that's a tank killer. Usually you see swarms and it's like, oh, they're just going to be a tar pitting unit for my warriors or my troops. But he moved his tanks up. He moved up his Chimeras. He even moved up his Leman Russes. And they were in charge range. Even though I rolled really bad runs and everything, they were still in charge range. 4 of them were in charge range of the 2 Scarab Swarms. And out of those 4, 2 of them were destroyed, and the other 2 had armor stripped off of them, and then they were both stunned. And so they were 2 Chimeras that were stunned, and so he had to disembark everybody if he wanted to fire, because the next turn the Scarab Swarms were going to be in base contact and get a ton of auto hits and finish off those Chimeras, so he had to kill them. So he disembarked them, but he wasn't able to kill all the Scarab Swarms on the one side. He completely annihilated the Scarab Swarms on the other side, but the one side he just couldn't finish them off because he didn't have enough firepower from the guys. And they were too close to the tanks for the Leman Russes to start firing their plasma cannons into them. And so then they were able to take out those 2 Chimeras, and there was just enough bases left to then run over and kill another Leman Russ and then start to maim another Chimera before the game finally ended. And so that, right there at that point, having not fired to the Scarab Swarms and then moving the tanks up was the reason that, unfortunately, that Cam lost that game, quite thoroughly, mind you. Now, I want to go back to talking about the list tailoring, because it is an important issue to discuss. In this case, see, when I go up against Mechanized Imperial Guard, when I was a Tyranid player, that was a next to impossible list to crack. If I know that somebody's bringing Mechanized Imperial Guard, I'd be like, oh, shoot. Tyrannids have a very, very hard time with that because they don't have enough anti-mech, or anti-mechanized, I should say, not mech as in M-E-Q, but M-E-C-K, like mechanized. They don't have enough things that can punch through the armor. It's very difficult for them to do that. You give Hormagaunts adrenal glands and they can strength 4 on the charge, and so they can glance the back of them, but then they're getting hit with plasma cannons and flamers, heavy flamers to boot, and all of this. So then there's not a lot of ranged capabilities. Like, you can get Zone Throps and Hive Guard. They can do some damage, but they're not going to be able to have the same capability that other armies have to take up mechanized. So in my mind, when I hear Mechanized Imperial Guard, I was like, shoot, this is going to be hard. And since I'm new with my Necrons, and I knew that if I bring in Ghost Arcs and all these other ones, they're just going to get shot down by the plasma cannons. Because I had brought in lots of Ghost Arcs. There was one game where I brought in lots of Ghost Arcs against a Chaos Space Marine player, against John, and he was able to pulverize them because he just dropped in a bunch of Meltas and boom, they were all dead. And ironically, when I lost that game, I didn't see any comments about John tailoring his list against me. And that's interesting to see that. It's obviously the onus is on me because I'm the one that people come and challenge, and so obviously people are going to give me a bit more flack, which is fine. That's perfectly fine. I didn't take offense to any of the comments, by the way. This is just an interesting discussion, I find. And so when I heard that he's bringing Mechanized Imperial Guard, I thought, well, I got to try to beat that. I wonder what would happen if I brought a foot-slogging Necron army. Now, everybody assumed that I was tailoring the list perfectly against him, and that was just dumb luck. I just happened to build a list that worked really well. But if you really look closely, what did all the damage? What really destroyed his army? Well, we had the Scarab Swarms. They ran up and destroyed 5 of his tanks. The Necron Lord and the Command Barge flew over a tank and did nothing, and then it got shot out of the air and killed in the next turn. Managed to reanimate and go up and kill 3 of his and little heavy emplacements, but that's hardly a feat because they're cheap and they're easy to kill. They're like toughness 3, so that's all he did. I had a group of warriors in the back who just sat on an objective and did absolutely nothing. The other group of warriors were probably the star because they soaked up so much damage, and then they moved up and rapid fired down a group of guys. But that's hardly anything unusual that they did. And then the Lich Guard spent all their time just moving up, and then they ended up just charging into 2 groups of the emplacements and killing them. Oh, they also killed 1 group of regular guard once they jumped out of their Chimera. That's really all the other guys did. They took out 2 or 3 squads of just regular infantry who are not very hard to kill once they're out of their Chimeras. Really, the Scarab Swarms are what won me the game there. Everything else just kind of softened up the rest of the army, while the Scarab Swarms destroyed the meat of the army, which is the 3 Leman Russes, and half of his Chimeras as well. So the fact that the Scarab Swarms did that, if you think about it, what would happen if he had destroyed those Scarab Swarms? Well, the game would have probably played very differently. In fact, I won't say that I would have lost, although I probably would have. I really probably would have, because how do you take down that many vehicles with Gauss weapons? All I would have had left to take out that vehicle, those vehicles, was a couple of overlords with war size. The Lich Guard are just strength 5 power weapons, so they can glance on 5s and penetrate on 6s with rear armor 10, but that's about it. And so there was really nothing else to take down the vehicles. So here's what I think. I think that, yes, I knew what he was bringing, and I tailored my list, but I do that with every game. And my opponents normally do that as well. They know what I have. You just have to watch my battle reports and see what I have. I don't bring the same army every time. Typically you see some similarities, but this is only like my 6th or 7th game with Necron, so I want to experiment, and I think I found something interesting with this foot-slogging army. And number 2, the list tailoring did not win me the game. It was the tactics, or not my tactics, but the mistakes that Cam made in the game. Now this is I'm not meaning any offense to Cam. They weren't this glaringly obvious mistakes that he had made. Anybody could have made those mistakes and then lost the game because of it. In fact, how many games have you played and then you realize afterwards, if only I had done this one little thing, the game would have gone completely different. Hindsight is always 20/20, as people like to say. So I want to hear your comments though. Make sure you go watch the battle report. I'll put a link right below this video. Now, all these comments that I'm talking about were on the MiniWarGaming website. I don't know if these comments are up on YouTube because this video is not on YouTube yet. But typically, the comments that I get on MiniWarGaming site, we also get. People generally give on YouTube as well. You tend to get the same sentiments, whether they're good or bad. And so what do you think about that? What do you think really won me the game? And what do you think about list tailoring overall? Is it something that's bad, or is it something that should happen? And I don't mean you know exactly what your opponent's bringing, but you know a basic idea. You know that generally he's a Tyranid player and he likes to bring swarms of Hormagaunts and Genestealers. So this is what I'm going to do. Is that really bad for you to know a general idea of what your opponent's bringing and then to bring something to counter that? Or should you always play games with all-comers lists? An all-comer list is something that you just build that should work against everybody, which, by the way, is impossible. That doesn't exist in 40K. There's too much variation amongst the armies for you to bring one list that can beat everything, unless you have an overpowered list, which just nothing can beat. But for the most part, it's hard to do. So what do you think? Leave a comment below if you think that what I did was this horrible, horrible thing. Ironically enough, today I'm playing against another Imperial Guard player. By the time you see this video, I'll already be playing the game or already be done the game. So you should watch that battle report when it comes out next. It'll be an Imperial Guard versus Necrons battle report. It'll be 2,000 points, I believe. I'll have to check when he gets here. He's coming down from Ottawa. And we'll see how that works out. I'm gonna tailor my list again. I don't know exactly what he's bringing, but it is somewhat mechanized. But I don't think that same list is going to work against him. I'm going to have to work on it a little bit and see how it works out there. Leave your comments below what you think. This is Matthew from MiniWarGaming. Merry Christmas if you're watching this on MiniWarGaming. If you're watching this on YouTube, then it's already January. So Happy New Year, I guess, and Happy